Hi everyone from Giaco. After living over a decade in Finland, I decided to help building a bridge between the English-speaking people living in Finland and the local community. Listen to my podcast to discover the most interesting and incredible people from Finland and to dig into Finnish culture and controversial issues that impact all of us in our daily life. And now sit back and enjoy listening. Bye! Hi everyone. The following is a conversation with the candidate for the presidential election for Finland 2024, Mika Aaltola. He is an extremely knowledgeable person that has a clear stand on geopolitical situation of Europe and Finland, and he is raising such topics strongly to the public. He is an humble but determinate person that is clearly ready to work hard for his dreams. Please enjoy. Hi Mika.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. Of course, it's busy time with the kid, the childcare aspect. That's the priority. Son who is year and a half.
Yeah.
That's the frame of my life, and then other things can happen if he's in the daycare, and then I can move. I can give interviews and have podcasts like this. That's the active hours, but I have to say that the other hours are also very active.
Just dedicated to something else.
Yes, just dedicated. That's the priority. I wouldn't do this outside of that framework, so we are equally taking care of the child, as is proper in Finland, which is one of the most egalitarian countries in the world.
True. Yeah, you and your wife, you mean. But and then just to set the stage, we have also Mika's dog here, so they are keeping also some sound in the background. But so on top of this, your child, then you have your normal work and you are running for president.
Yes, I'm a kind of a write-in candidate, so I don't have a political party, and that requires 20,000 signatures, support cards to be filled. We are already past that hurdle. It took a month and a half, so it was a very speedy process, one of the speediest in the Finnish presidential history. Now we have around 30,000 cards, and it's growing, so we are still gathering those because it's a very good way of contacting people. They come in and they sign in different corners of Finland, and they have a chance to talk with me, shake hands, share some thoughts. So it is a way of campaigning, although it was created as a hurdle, so that it is more difficult for people outside of political parties to enter the game.
Yeah. This is a good aspect, and I would like to maybe go deeper on it later, because it is, of course, it differentiates you from the other. Well, there are others that are in the same position as you during this campaign, but I would like to set the stage talking about you, your background, your studies. You've been abroad, you have been growing in your career, you've been writing books. So there is a lot of Mika before now.
Yes, quite a lot. But of course, I didn't know this when I started my studies, but actually it is a really good background, because the first priority for any president is that they have a vision for the country. They have an understanding of the world that is surrounding us, so they know, they have the wisdom about Finnish foreign policy. So actually being able to study that, to do research on it in different aspects of the whole.
During your past.
During the past, so it gives you a CV. It's a background for that primary feature that any president needs to have. If you don't have that inside your head, then it's very difficult to work in, for example, in a crisis situations, because you don't understand. You cannot, for example, have the historical perspective whereby you can kind of measure the magnitude of events if gas pipelines or data cables are severed. What does that mean? What is the magnitude? How should you react? Because you're not supposed to overreact or underreact. So the magnitude is very important to evaluate. Therefore, you need to know quite a lot of stuff.
How you approach the problem, and then I guess you also have to understand the long-term effect of the decision that you will make.
Yes, there's a cascade of different events that come today to our radar, and to figure out that cascade, that myriad of different things, the mosaic that is influencing Finland. So the background basically is that I grew up in central Finland, in the Lake District of Finland, so to say. I grew up in countryside, watching cows and understanding the kind of the livelihood, how Finland, to what Finland is based on. And then from there I moved to US in 88, a long time ago.
Yeah.
So you have to really struggle to remember the years. And
were you already studying history? Were you already interested in history? Am I right? You started.
Yes. That was my top grade always, history. And there was a topic called societal studies, and I was on top of my class on both of these aspects. Also religion as a topic was very interesting to me. I knew about the world religions quite a lot, but history, yes, I was reading quite a lot of history books already by time of secondary school. And I'm philosophy. My father was a philosopher of education, and retired as a professor. So in our household we discussed very metaphysical topics, and my father was a follower, a student of Ludwig Wittgenstein, one of the philosophers, great philosophers of last century. And we talked, my family members talked so much about Wittgenstein that I was sure that he must be alive, and he must be somebody very, very close to us. And I remember when I was under 10 and somebody called our home, and I answered the phone and I asked the question, are you Ludwig Wittgenstein? And obviously he was long gone by then, but
it was a presence in your
life. The presence was lively, so I thought that he is around somewhere.
And so you are in this small town, grounded to nature, but still you are exposed to a lot of thinking, and values, and
a kind of a very grounded values of Finland, then historical experience of Finnish people living in the peninsula. Those are one of the keys to the Finnish culture. If you know the history of the Finns, they are relatively ready to talk about winter war, for example. So it is always wise to go and study the meanings of those, because it opens up doors to the Finnish way of thinking.
To the culture,
kind of a stubborn, independent, almost Spartan country in its essence. And the laconic nature of Finns, they don't talk a lot, but they mean what they say.
True.
So it has it's historically grounded and rooted. Finland as a country that has always been a target of imperialism. We haven't been a European great power ever. So it sets us apart from Swedes, for example. They have had the imperial history. We don't have it. So the story of Finland it is very important part of Finnishness that it has been built and rebuilt stubbornly over the centuries and the periods of history. They are called hates, the long hate, the old hate, the great hate, the little hate. So if you have periods of like that in your history, it means something.
Yeah, leave some marks in the
It leaves
the people and the culture.
Yeah, kind of across the generations, certain narratives and stories have been told, and they are still present today. And I think that they were very much connected to the Finnish decision to go to NATO when things started to happen in Ukraine. The Finns remembered, and it was immediate that you need to find shelter and security.
You're much more united than the universal vote that was before asked. So it's changed the attitude of the Finns.
Yes, and we are also a egalitarian country, so there has always been one key phrase that one should never leave anybody behind. That everybody is needed. So it's based on that, the egalitarian culture. That we need to take with us everybody. So we cannot discriminate. It is almost sinful in the Finnish culture.
Yeah, I can see you already describe this long arch of happenings through history that they boils down then into the decision for the NATO. So I can see how you connect the dots. But so did you immediately go into history? Or were you studying before?
Yes.
Weren't you studying before for psychology?
Yes, psychology was my main major when I was studying at Columbia University in New York when I moved to there. Of course, that move was a little bit painful because I was living in a very sheltered, small village near Jyväskylä, and one of the first newspaper stories, if not the first, I think it was the first. The heading was that from the forest to metropolis. So I moved to New York. First year I was close to New York, and then I transferred my credits to Columbia University, one of the best schools in US. So living in Manhattan, that was basically the campus where I grew up, and I was studying psychology. I thought it's more practical than the topic that my father had studied, philosophy. So I wanted to go into more pragmatic direction. Sorry about that. So have a top major that actually can contribute to livelihood. But of course, I was very interested in the political psychology. So in a big university, in a world-class university, you had a chance to choose the courses relatively freely. So I was studying international relations and political psychology, cognitive biases, decision-making theories, crisis situations, Cuban Missile Crisis. I remember writing a long essay on how the decisions were made, kind of the psychological side of international relations. So I had an interest on the topic even before. And then after New York, after staying 4 years in Manhattan, I came back to Finland, to University of Tampere. And I continued my psychology studies, by the way, there. Okay. I even did my internship in a mental health clinic or hospital close by to Tampere. But I started to do my master's degree in Japanese studies, concentrating on foreign policy of Japan.
Yes.
It was a hot topic back then because the sun was rising back then. Now we know that sun can also set.
Yeah.
But concentrating on the Asia-Pacific region, and as it went through the end of the Cold War, kind of opened doors to that direction. And it's vital to understand the world more broadly.
Yeah.
Also relevant to Finnish foreign policy. We have always thought in Finland that Russia is the lightning rod that conveys the shocks of the world to Finland. And Russia has been involved in the Asia-Pacific. For example, the Russo-Japanese War, 1904-1905, a good example of that. So Finland is connected because we are next to Russia, to the world. So I did my MA degree. Also studied Japanese language, but I have to say that I'm a master of no language, not even the Finnish.
English is going good.
Oh, English is okay, but I have stayed in the US for 8 years, so even an idiot could learn. Then I did my master's degree on that. The master's thesis was rewarded as the best in Finland in political sciences when it was published 1995, if I remember correctly.
Congratulations.
Well, it was good. It was kind of supportive because, of course, back then you didn't know what kind of a career options are ahead of you. So clearly it was a kind of a push for me to go into kind of a university studies, university life. So I continued then doing my PhD degree at University of Tampere, and 1999 I did my thesis defense. Part of the thesis was done also at University of Cambridge in UK. So I stayed there 1997. Going to that very classical university was part of my education. Sorry of the coughing.
No.
You know, the child is bringing all the possible.
Classic.
Yes, yeah. I had a flu 2 weeks ago and still suffering the after effects of it.
Yeah. They always bring the nastiest thing from the daycare.
There's a list next to the door of the daycare that tells you what is going on right now.
Yeah. So you know the symptom when you go home.
Yes,
What do you have? What I saw that you also wrote, was it for a thesis or a book? You wrote about pandemics or this kind of like social.
Yeah, I concentrated. Actually, my thesis title back then was Written Rule of International Relations, the Case of Mad Cow Disease. It was a theoretical doctoral dissertation, so I was focusing, guess who? Ludwig Wittgenstein's philosophy and how it could be applied to international relations, and the basic finding or conclusion is that there's no rules in international relations. There's only the rhythm, the pulse, the tempo or events, and then different actors reacting to that tempo. So it is some kind of a dance almost, and still I think still I have this framework. So we concentrate on one event, and back then 1997 it was the mad cow disease. Nobody remembers that because but back then momentarily it was very
the biggest thing
ever. So the attention peaked, everybody was focusing on that. And it paralyzed the European Union decision making because the UK started to boycott the intergovernmental process. So the disease shocked the European Union. It shocked the intergovernmental relations back then. And basic theory is that the attention peaks and then it starts to wane, and everything becomes very politicized, and then the whole affair is forgotten. And that is the kind of the basic expectation when we have wars, diseases, disasters.
Did you see some connection and similarities in the COVID pandemic theory?
Well, quite a lot, but it was a case, out of the 200 pages, not many pages were dedicated to the case study. So it was a theoretical work. So the case could have been a war, terror strike, disaster, natural disaster, or something else. And because it was so important back then, I decided to study the mad cow disease that came about briefly 1997. Everybody who had ever eaten hamburgers thought that they are going to die soon.
Yeah.
So it was,
the panic was
very existential.
spread. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
the panic. And I did then later on study. I have done 2 books after that on kind of the pandemic security framework. So first studied the kind of the panics or scares, and then I did a book 2 years ago on the actual pandemic outbreak, and that was the COVID-19.
Yeah.
Before that we have SARS and different other diseases, which were mainly scares because they didn't they went global in the same way.
Yeah, they didn't expand in the same way. Were you consulted during the pandemic?
I did.
Over your books?
I did, and people usually forget that I have been quite a lot in media previously as well. So I have been always the bad omen. So if something bad happens, if there's a crisis, conflict, terror strike, I'm the person usually that is approached. So I have been there doing long hours for past 15 years. I came to the Finnish Institute of International Affairs, Affairs 2008, and so I have been the person to call upon if something happens. Because of my interest in abnormal situations, crises, conflicts, and so forth. I know how the attention peaks and what happens then afterwards. I have a very good sense when it comes to framing of events, what categories they belong to and what is to be expected afterwards. So I have an ability to do a synthesis of the event. Quite ready ability to do that. But when I did my PhD, I stayed at University of Tampere for a number of years. 2004, I went to India. I was there most of the time, lecturing on good governance in different corners of India. That is something that I usually don't mention that much because 30 years of research life, there's quite a lot of different things you have done. And then 2006, I went from Tampere to University of Minnesota to Minneapolis to be a professor there for 2 years. So altogether, I have been in US for 8 years. And also working there as a professor, as a senior researcher in Washington in 2 occasions. So quite a lot of experience when it comes to US, which is not a bad thing because it seems to be very important for Finland nowadays.
Oh yes, for all the world, it's a power. And then you, after Minnesota, did you come back to Finland?
I came directly to 2008 to Finnish Institute of International Affairs. I was first as a researcher there, paid by the Academy of Finland, a special position called Academy Fellow. And then 2011 I became director of the Global Security Program there. So then I had quite many researchers to direct on different aspects of the global situation. So I have my experience on different corners of the world, studying European Union decision making, studying Japanese foreign policy, and then the Finnish foreign policy, and then global security as such, the dynamics.
And you've seen also USA from within.
Yes, and I have studied the American political system. I did a book on US foreign policy and US global role, couple of books. Quite many books I have written. If you would ask me how many, I have forgotten, but quite a lot.
I like something.
I like the book format because you can express kind of a longer idea,
Yeah.
longer synthesis.
Articulated.
Yeah,
more.
articulated. It's difficult to do that in a tiny article. So I like big chunks of things.
Yeah,
Kind of the overview of things.
Yeah.
So I didn't specialize on one single issue and go very deep into it. So I like this, seeing connections between
The big picture.
Yeah, big
Yeah, I can see while you talk that's exactly what you like, but and probably that differs also you from a typical historian that tells facts, and
Yes.
they are more dedicated to maybe where did the border move,
Yes.
in what years, from what area,
Yeah.
and how many tanks were there. You're more for the big pictures, and there is a lot of people inside your story. So there is a lot
Well, the focus is usually human dimension. So what
Exactly.
does wars affect? How do they affect, humanity as such, and different populations and the individual people? My empathy goes to those, the contemporaries who have to face situations.
Yeah,
So I
because
don't.
they are affected by
Yes.
historical events.
And usually I don't, the institute that I became then the director of 2019, we focus on contemporary international relations. So we are an institute of knowledge of last resort. If you want to know what is happening in the world, they usually call us.
Yeah.
If they can't find anybody else, and then they call me. So I follow quite a lot. So I build scenarios, what is happening, how it impacts Finland, and then I also give policy advices. So what Finland should do in this situation, and I have been doing that for years. So the jump from that into having a vision for Finland is not particularly burdensome. It is kind of a very logical and natural next step.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you've been playing anyway in politics from a different role. You've been kind of a consultant.
Yes, consultant in a sense, but also the expectation is that it's impartial and non-partisan. Non-partisan, and that's the brand that I have been kind of building from in the presidential elections. No party, independent ideas about what Finland should do and what is the future going to look like. What is around the corner for Finland, and that's very unique. You don't have many people like that in Finland who would have been specializing on the kind of the bigger picture of things, and also Finland at the same time. Finnish foreign policy wasn't the most popular topic for 10 years. Yes.
Yeah, it's it seems a matter of survival.
Yes, and in European context, the idea was that different foreign policies would connect, and the paradigm was Europeanization of foreign policy. So a lot of people were studying that, how the Finnish foreign policy is actually going to go away because it's not needed anymore. You have only the European foreign policy. Yeah. But of course that was a fallacy. Now we have different foreign policies in the European Union.
Yeah, so it's not centralized, it is decentralized again.
Yes, you have Hungary with very cozy connections with Russia, so-called peace policy. Then you have Baltic states which are drawing from their historical experience vis-a-vis Russia. And then you have Finland that has very solid background, but then again also was wavering when it came to NATO membership. So there are differences.
And also geographically, these all countries are different and in a different strategical position. So of course there are foreign policies that have to be taken, stuff to be taken in consideration when making foreign policies.
Well, let's talk about Italy, because Finnish president is just visiting Italy yesterday and today, and it has its historical connections to Northern Africa, for example. Sure. It has its connections to Central Europe. It's unique.
And Eastern Europe, Africa, Arabia countries. Yes,
quite unique, and so there are different scenarios for different countries and for their future, coming from different backgrounds. So there is a bit of a convergence, Europeanization, but on top of that, you have also unique features.
Yeah, internal affairs. So you were mentioning at the beginning, and now came also slightly, you are running a different kind of campaign for many reasons. One is that you are not affiliated to any political party.
No.
And normally the way of going is that a political party will nominate a candidate that runs for the president, so that it is kind of clear what the values are and what this person is standing for.
Yes.
You, because the law allows everyone, if I'm correct, over 18 years old and born in Finland to run for president, regardless if they are or not bounded to any, if they have a political card or not. And you are this case. You don't have a political affiliation and you're running. And so you have to have these letters that you were talking about.
20,000 signatures. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So that it's kind of like, it validates the fact that you are a candidate to be taken in consideration.
Yes, they are doing the counting and they're going to officially see if the papers that I have been delivered, that they have the 20,000 names there, the addresses are correct and they correspond to the signature. It's not faked. That's one of the processes, and the Finnish presidency is elected through direct vote. So there's independent candidates, and most of them have always come from political parties. I think I'm the first serious candidate coming outside of the party system. So it's a direct vote, direct democratic process. Whereas the elections for the parliament, those are governed by parties. The representatives are elected every 4 years there, and they are usually in the rubric of parties. So I don't have that, and that leads to an issue, of course. What do I stand for when I don't have a political party? Because parties usually have their value systems there, and that's something that people are interested in. Where I stand in particular.
There has been actually critics, and people have criticized that. Actually, just reading, but some politician or some writers, journalists that write about politics has been wondering, like, where do you stand and where do you belong to? What is your core value? Because they have been actually even saying that depending on certain situation, it seems that you are talking can lean towards one or the other side according to what crowd you face.
Yeah, that's the obvious. I think it's usually the candidates do that. When you're talking to an audience, you have to take into consideration who they are, so that the message goes and stays with them. So it's important to do that, of course. That's what everybody does when they are speaking. So I don't usually speak from written notes. I speak spontaneously. Yeah. And I can speak long. 4 hours is easy for me, because you have ideas. So my recommendation usually is for people who are thinking who I am, come and listen. I'm very frank when I speak.
Yeah.
I speak what is in my mind. And the core values I have, they are the values of the republic that connects people. You have to have a certain amount of courage, and I think every Finn understands that running independently requires quite a lot of courage.
Yeah, sure. But
yeah, and then the equality, the Finnish mind set is very focused on the rights of people. So that's one of my focus areas, that we have to respect the rights. Then you need to have a wisdom-seeking mind. People value that quite a lot. And of course modesty, that fits. So the modesty of the Finns, when we celebrate our independence, it's very kind of a low-key event.
Yeah,
humble event. So those are the values that connect people. Then you need to give them some hope. You know, the future when it comes to the world situation is of course looking very bleak. There's crisis and conflicts. There's the world order challenge that China and Russia are making. So things do not look very hopeful, but you need to give people hope, because I think if we have a plan, then everything is going to be just fine. So worrying is a sentiment that if it's unanchored can be like an idle wheel. It doesn't do any work. But if it's connected to a plan, then worry is a very motivating force. So that's what I'm talking about, you know, the Finnish defense, security, the infrastructure of Finland, so that it is shaped in such a way that we can face the future that is very stormy.
Yeah, but we will for sure go that. But if you would have to mention your values, make some sort of a list. Okay, now this came equality.
Equality, you know,
it
that's
came out from here.
Yeah, equality. It can be kind of a leftist idea, but I see that as a universal starting point.
I don't think we need to give any sort of name for them, but just what you
that is usually what people are looking. Are you right wing or left wing? Are you conservative? Are you liberal? And
that's true.
I feel very uncomfortable because I have never felt like being in one camp.
Yeah, of course. The way the journalism work is that people want to put you in a box.
Yes.
But now we are here to get to know who Mika is, and so what would be the set of values you feel, whether for you or the country? Because anyway, then at the end you extend yourself and your personality in the work you do and in the things you do.
Yeah, well, I'm a realist, you know, when it comes to the vision for the future. When it comes to me as a person, you know, if realism is connected with worrying about the future, you know, I'm personally a very optimistic person. I wouldn't have gone into this presidential run if I wouldn't be a very optimistic person. So I'm more hopeful in my personal life. But when you have to think about Finland as such, then it's based on realism, which is a school of thought in international relations. It's not that familiar with most of the population. So I'm not a liberal in the international sense of the word. So realism means that you are very grounded to the facts.
Yeah.
So you have to think about the actual capabilities of the nation. I'm a classical realist, and therefore I think about also the mentality of the people. We have to be now kind of mobilizing ourselves for the future.
Yeah.
In personal life, perhaps not that realist. I'm much more hopeful and more liberal in my leanings.
Yeah.
You know, I don't select my friends. I love to be in presence of people who think in different other ways than I do. I like to be challenged. You know, the studies on crisis situations and crisis management back then when I did, they are based on the idea that groupthink is always bad.
Yeah.
So you have to bring in people who don't agree with you, but who understand your way of thinking, so they can communicate their critical insights.
Yeah. You can create more out of the same conversation.
Yeah. So that's basically my democracy ideal as well, that it's always good that we have different ways of thinking in Finland. But when it comes to crisis situations, then it needs to be united. The whole nation has to kind of work for the same goal.
Without forgetting the people that are there.
Yes,
anyway. And that's partly also we've seen why your philosophy from home and psychology study, they are bringing quite strongly also in the story of your life.
They are, and you know, my way of approaching the war as well. And that was a kind of crisis situation where I was tested, you know, spending hours and hours explaining that to members of parliament, but also to the general public. So the vision was tested back then, and the key aspect, I think, that made me popular back then was I was present. And the value of political speech, the value of creating presence is perhaps a little bit under appreciated in Finland. So I have that. It could be that it comes from the US degree that you have to connect with public, you have to connect with the people you are talking to. You have to know how they are thinking, therefore you can kind of get your message across. And that's very important in politics, the presence. You know, if Zelensky wouldn't have done that.
Master of presence.
Yes, on the night when Kiev was attacked and the siege of Kiev started, that he came and had his mobile phone in front of him, and at the very center of Maidan he gave the speech and started that I'm here, we are here. The presence was felt, and Ukraine was united, and it fought in every village and every city before they had the Western weapons. You know what actually defeated the Russian approach, the Russian attack, was the mentality of people.
That I read also, that probably most likely that single video is the reason why the resistance has been so fierce and changed the rule of the game like in one night without weapons. And it was only well, I don't think it was strategical, like a thought. It was more of a call of pride from within. I felt it genuine. Then maybe if it's not, then at that point he's a master of communication.
He was amazing when he gave the speech to the European Council a couple of days after, and he ended it by saying that, you know, this might be the last time you are going to see me. It left a mark to the European leaders. They felt the urgency to unite and show their solidarity. So he was courageous, and I think that's one of the key features, characteristic of a leader, that you are not fearful to do even unpopular moves. And I have been doing that sometimes, pushing for the NATO membership last spring, that we have to kind of disconnect our application from the Swedish application, which I knew that is the best thing to do, because the Turks were
it's going to take longer.
And other Swedes are going to get in, because the idea was that if we disconnect and they accept Finland, they halfway accept also Sweden. And
favorites both.
So that reading the Turks right, and also recommending that it wasn't popular, but you know, you have to sometimes go
bravely.
against. And the latest is kind of having some critical remarks on the Finnish media that of course led into a big storm here in Finland. But you know, you have to be true to your beliefs, and so it's not only kind of surfing the wave and finding the route of least resistance. It's also kind of demonstrating that you have the guts to do things.
It connects back to your classic realism way of approaching that. That's what it is.
It is. You know, I know, you know, the way forward. Of course, it is mine. Of course, there are other competing visions, but you have to be true to your way of doing things, and you have to demonstrate that also to the people. Sometimes good president is the president who has the guts to do unpopular decisions.
Since you've been studying and you see this long-term path and arch that go from longer back, and then they might go faster or some more intense, but they culminate into something, and you've seen this kind of arches. Did you see the war in Ukraine coming? Were you saying to yourself, like, this is going to happen within X amount of years?
That was a difficult call. The war was approaching. You know, we saw the first inclinations of that in October. Clearly, kind of the weak and strong signals were coming in, but Finland was kind of based on the politics of hope. So let's be hopeful about Russia. So I remember
everyone, also all the Europe was playing the same game.
we 2 generations of European politicians were managing Russia without any strategic understanding of the
hoping
situation.
that they will become democratic.
Let's make deals. Let's build the Nord Stream pipelines and let's kind of a peace through trade type of idea. Now we understand that without peace you cannot have trade, but back then it was reverse. So 2 generations of European politicians failed to see this coming, even though Putin in Munich 15 years ago said it aloud what he aims to do. But we believe that he's not that serious.
We can mellow.
We can deal with this situation, we can manage him. And we failed to carry out the basic promise, generational promise, never again.
Yeah.
And somehow we gave the room for Russia to start the operation, and that was a big failure. But when the paradigm was shifting in the fall 2021, after the fall of Kabul and the disastrous operation there, we were paying attention, and the Russians were.
Yeah.
They saw a West that was kind of in a crisis mode. We were thinking, like the Americans screwed Afghanistan up, and we should have the capability. We were fighting transatlantic feud resulted from the disaster. And Putin saw that West is not united. They cannot think strategically, and they have been eating too many candies. They have grown in sugar. They are liberal people. They don't have a spine.
Yeah.
And I'm a country. I'm leading a country of warriors.
Yeah, pride.
The mother Russia, pride. That's the ultimate motivation of many wars. So he had that. So he saw his moment, and we weren't prepared that much. And it was difficult when I remember in an interview I gave day before Christmas that the war is very probable, tangible. And I remember I had phone calls from politicians saying that now you ruined the Christmas mood, and we shouldn't talk like this.
You're too realistic.
Yeah. But we declared research emergency in mid-December at FIA, and I, as a director, I said that now work on this. Everybody focuses on this from different aspects.
Yeah.
They have their specializations, and they can, what is the likelihood? What are the consequences? What should Finland do? What the European Union should do?
Scenario playing also.
Yeah, so we established the situation rooms, exercises where everybody was participating, and they were very eagerly participating because it was so tangible, the approaching of the war. But predicting wars, that's a cumbersome thing. The Americans knew it.
Yeah, I think.
The Finns didn't that much. When I was discussing with high officials, I saw that they would, they were thinking that it won't come because it's so easy to predict that yesterday was similar to today, and tomorrow most likely is going to look like it was yesterday and today. But when there's kind of a frame-breaking events, those are very difficult to predict. So the war started, and then what is very predictable is that when you attack, then you unite the target of your attack. That's the historical truth, and it's very difficult to win united populations. And Russia managed to basically unite the whole West after the failure of Afghanistan. That was a miracle that Putin managed to do, but he did, and that wasn't in his cards. It wasn't his plan. His plan was that Soviet Union or Russia back then, or soon afterwards, the end of the Cold War, that the Lady Fortuna, the dealer, gave Russia such bad cards that if now Putin reshuffles the deck, Russia is bound to get better cards. but you can get even worse cards if you
yeah.
shuffle it, if you are really unlucky.
Or maybe also Putin thought that like he had played his cards and he had some small winning here and there in Georgia that Western countries have shut an eye and said like, okay, we give you a free pass this time.
Yeah, and it was this piecemeal approach that he was trying with Ukraine. Russian plan was much strategic, bigger, grand. So it was the idea to change the whole European security order so that Russia would have this sphere of influence, including also Finland. So it had very big plans, similar to China. They have similar type of objectives, but of course the means are a little bit different. So it was a little bit distasteful for China what Russia did, but China has supported Russia economically.
Yes.
Russia would have collapsed without China lending its helpful hand.
Yeah, absolutely. You now that you were saying that you were there when the speech, Zelensky's speech was given.
I wasn't in the European Council. I was back home
But
going to the media, but I remember the Finnish Prime Minister who came back from the speech came to the media, and I could see in her face still the after effects of the speech.
Yeah.
So the speech is
They are
powerful tools.
Yeah. How do you think the European Union has reacted to the threat? Because you've been studying anyway this kind of events, and what is, as you were saying, that there is this space, this tempo, and how decisions are made, and how is the reaction. So, did you see this being played out as you kind of thought?
Yeah, it is.
And do you agree? Would you do the same?
Well, on the hindsight, of course, we should have given out basically the Americans, but also Europeans. We have capabilities that are bigger that we gave to Ukraine. So on the hindsight, Biden should have given more sooner. Now things are getting kind of a long winding. So we are down the road of a long war. It could have been shortened if the aid would have been more effective. But Putin, I think the West was successful in containing the war to Ukraine. I said that Putin had bigger plans.
Yeah.
If we would have reached the border of Poland, the situation would have been very, very much tenser.
Yeah.
And I think Finland would have hesitated with joining of NATO if Russia is victorious. So it was down to few people at the end. Zelensky going to Maidan and uniting the people. The Ukrainian civil guard reacting in the airport 30 kilometers south from Kiev, where Russians had made the landing operation and they were trying to establish the air corridor to bring in more troops. If those few soldiers wouldn't have fought, the history would have been different. So, what makes people act in such a courageous way? How humans, ordinary people, react to the war. And in the gates of hell to north from Kiev, the Ukrainians call them gates of hell because, horrible things happened there. But they were ordinary people who fought in the gates of hell.
With the right motivation.
Yes, with the right motivation. And not many survived, unfortunately. We are now seeing Ukrainian army. This must be 4th or 5th Ukrainian army. And out of those past armies, you don't have many people left.
True. So what should Europe do in this crisis situation?
Well, we should have a much more strategic understanding of the situation. It's not enough for Germans to say that Ukraine must not lose, or Finns saying that Ukraine must win. What pragmatic steps we take, and what does it mean? We should start immediately with construction or reconstruction of Ukraine. I have been visiting Kiev. I was there in May. I know the situation, that it is peaceful, relatively peaceful in certain parts of Ukraine. Let's start the reconstruction. the first step is for us to give them the capability of producing their own Western arms.
Yeah.
Ukrainians know how to do it. We need to have the courage to do that.
That's a long-term plan.
Well, I think it should start immediately.
Yeah.
Give them the capability of manufacturing
Better
arms.
sooner than later.
So they are not dependent on our aid.
Yeah.
We have confiscated $250 billion worth of Russian assets.
Yeah.
So that money, diverting that immediately to that reconstruction effort. So there's some kind of a mental barriers that we still have. We don't understand that what Russia is. It's a hostile state.
Yeah. It's proven.
So reconstruction of Ukraine. So we could have from the Arctic to Baltic Sea to the Black Sea, countries like the Nordics, the Balts, Germans, the Poles, and then the Ukrainians. That's a big obstacle for Russia in the future if we start, interconnecting this big plan.
Yeah.
But we kind of lack this because we have still this little bit in our unconscious mind. We still believe that Russia will stop, Putin will fall. It's not going to happen. If Putin falls, there's going to be a like-minded person leading Russia. The only true opposition in Russia is the war opposition, who are saying that Putin hasn't done enough. I'm saying in here that West hasn't done enough. I'm a little bit in the opposition when it comes to what we have been doing. Of course, I feel empathy towards what we have done already, but sooner would have been better than later.
So, is this part of the motivation why? Because you anyway you are doing your role. It's anyway to give the same information you're giving me to the president now.
Yes.
To allow the president him to make the right decision.
Yes, yeah.
So you're kind of like already into the loop of this. You can have some sort. You have influence. Is this global situation, and then the broader situation that we can talk about a bit, is this something that drives you to this campaign?
It is. It is kind of you have to raise yourself into the moment. You have to see what you have done and the ideas you have. Are they fitting to the moment? If they are, then options are open. If they are not, then you should not do it. At the end, I was thinking about my son last summer, July, before I made the announcement that after 10 years, 15 years, when he has knowledge about the situation back then, and he sees that his father made the decision not to run, he didn't find the courage. So I think it's better to give the message an example of courage, that anybody can do it. The Finnish law allows it. The Finnish constitution is written in such a way that it actually, the direct vote for the president encourages individual people to show their competency and capability. So the political route is one route. It's the primary route, getting positions through political memberships, becoming a minister in a government. Looks good in your CV, but basically, ultimately, it is based on what is in your head, how you see the world, and the experience you have had previously in developing that. So that's my argument. Others, of course, focus on the CV, ministerial CV, but nobody has been, not a single day, as a president before.
Yeah, true. So, what is the role of the president in the Finnish government as a technical?
It's the competency has to do with. It says in the constitution that the president is in charge of the foreign affairs in cooperative manner with the government. So there's different interpretations what that means, that you have to act in a cooperative way. I see it as a virtue that any politician, any person in that position should have.
True.
That you have the skills to
Cooperate and mediate.
Yes. So, but of course, so the president is in charge of the defense. He's the chief of the armed forces.
Yeah. The supreme chief.
Supreme commander of the
exactly.
armed forces. Of course, in times of war, it is logically given to the real experts of that field. In charge of the security policy as it's defined, and then in charge of the foreign policy, which means that the relations of Finland with foreign powers and foreign organizations besides the European Union. The constitution gives that mandate to the prime minister and the government. And as you can see, there's a little bit of a conflict there built into the constitution. So because some of the foreign policy is European Union approaches vis-à-vis Russia, for example.
Yeah.
So decisions on sanctions are made in the government. But the spirit of the constitution is such that you should always consult the president on those decisions as well. So it's built to support kind of developing a common approach in foreign policy, forcing every generation of politicians to cooperate, having that kind of together-mindedness. So that's the basic spirit of the constitution. If you go alone, use your powers individually, then there's going to be problems. So, but usually in Finland, things are done in a consensus way in any case. But president needs to have the competencies on defense and in Finnish own foreign policy. That's the basic theme. And now when we are a member of NATO, president is in charge of that. So there's one plate on the table, NATO table, and that belongs to the president. And that changes a bit. So constitution it's a living document, so it is interpreted by the people, contemporaries.
And you have a right towards the European that you can sit in the discussion.
That plate was taken away.
Okay.
So the president doesn't go to the summits, the European Council meetings. It's the prime minister, different ministers who go there. But the president should be advised, consulted, and at the minimum be aware of the Finnish decisions there. So it's a bit of a confusing model, but it is the Finnish approach, forcing people to cooperative mode.
And does the presidency and the role, do you see it in a different, wider way? Yes,
and that's a key part that people are seeing. The president is seen as the symbol of the unity of Finland. So president comments on different affairs for the best of the Finnish people. So it says in the Finnish law when president swears in to the office, he gives an oath, and that oath has to do with the kind of supporting the opportunities of the Finnish state, of the Finnish nation. So it's a symbol of Finland standing together, and President historically has been able to comment on different other matters. What is glooming in front of us, what we should be ready of. President Niinistö, for example, was the first Finnish leader who was paying attention to COVID-19 situation. So in the beginning of February, he gave a speech that this is something that we should be preparing ourselves for. Before during that time, many even experts were saying that let's see if it spreads here. But any kind of a logical person would have known that it's spreading all over the place very soon. So the value question that he leads through values, that's important, and those are the connecting values that I was saying to you: hope, together-mindedness, courage, decency, equality. Those are the values that any presidency would be based on.
Is a president a role model?
Yes, to a degree. You are supposed to behave in a way that doesn't raise too many eyebrows. So the presidents have been embodying the nation, and we attach values to different presidents. The president during the wartime, Ristoryti, he sacrificed himself for the good of the nation. So he is remembered of that. Niinistö will be remembered of the uniting father figure that he has been. Marshal Mannerheim, who was also a president, by the way, the only president in Finland who never belonged to any political party.
You're trying to get...
Yeah, but he was a special person without any comparison in a very, very difficult times. Yeah. But he kind of a person with a backbone, courage. So different presidents have different qualities.
Sure. That different persons.
Yes, but mostly those have to do with the kind of the main colors of the Finland as a value system. And so you're not supposed to be very radically different from that. Otherwise, you're not going to be a president or
representing the country. So we talk about the values. We talk about the requirements. We talk about the role. And then there is always the way forward. So the vision. So what is the vision you envision for Finland? Now we're talking about European Union and what European Union should do towards and what you think should be done towards the Ukraine. But there is a much bigger picture. There is the whole world, and you have a vision for this candidate and the presidency.
We have to be pragmatic. Let's do with our own hands what we can do, and with our allies in European Union and in NATO, what we can do with them. We cannot reach the moon, that's for sure. We cannot be bigger than we are, but let's not be smaller than we are. So let's focus on the immediate situation here. So Russia is not going to change one generation. It's usually considered to be 20 years. But I got my first child when I was 50. So it can be longer nowadays. But 20 years, Finland is going to be facing a hostile eastern neighbor. And we have, quite a lot on our plate already. So let's try to work that. And when it comes to contributions for the kind of the global challenges, some of the motivations are already here. So the foreign policy motivates us to move towards cleaner energy, for example, because it's actually move away from the Russian oil and gas, the hydrocarbons of Russia. So kind of a more independent, clean energy. So we can make our contribution, and at the same time we can also tackle the foreign policy challenges. So the worries of our time, there's quite a lot of them. So let's bind them together and find motivation that is immediate, and that's the existential fear that we have. So we can solve quite a lot. And when it comes to multilateral international order, UN, Finland is always going to be a strong supporter of that, because the more you have that fabric, that tissue that runs across different states, the better, the smaller are. Wars are really bad because they treat small very badly.
Yeah, they run over. Run over.
But so the issue needs to be strengthened. So Finland always is going to contribute to that, to kind of the global order of things. So that's in the Finnish national interest to do. So that's clear from my perspective that we are going to keep doing that. But the immediate issues that we have and the strategic goals, so let's disconnect ourselves from the kind of quarterly profit-seeking behavior to kind of having at least what Russia has. I think Russia has been thinking 5 years ahead. China perhaps 20 or even 100 years ahead. So we should kind of go from kind of let's deal with the immediate situation to let's deal with the immediate situation with the long-term goals of what Finland is going to look like in 20 years, what the Europe is going to look like in 20 years. We should have strategic understanding of the situation. We screwed up because we only managed. So management was there, but the strategic understanding
So a
was
longer time frame plan.
yes, and we have to have a plan from the day one, because certain things have to be done, what we can afford to do now, and certain things that we are forced to do right now, whether we can afford them or not. And then what we can do in 5 years, what we can do in 10 years, and share that vision with the people. They understand if you give them kind of the goal that they agree with, then things are motivating. Things start to move, and now we are lacking that. The past 15 years, Finnish governments coming from different political parties have failed in the basic mission of even having economic growth in here.
Yeah.
So something is terribly wrong and needs to be fixed. And one of the keys is to kind of connect the dots to bigger vision of things, strategic understanding of the situation at hand, and also taking the nation further.
Yeah, you've been quite vocal and adamant that Finland should, yes, be part of European Union and be part of European Union plans, but also Finland should have its own plan.
Yes.
And connecting.
Yeah, and we should support others to understand the situation, because countries west to us can lose their side. We are, of course, motivated. We are here in Finland. And when Russia started, our neighbor Russia started a war in our neighborhood. We understand the situation very, very
how grave it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when you move further away from the vortex of the war, the less it means to you, and so we can support others finding their way as well. And in the European Union, yes, the sun also sets, and I'm worrying about Europe as, demographically we are facing a catastrophic situation, not only in Finland but in different other corners, even in Italy. Population is shrinking in the long term.
Yeah.
So Europe is facing, US is always going to be there. It's separated by 2 oceans. It doesn't have a hostile neighbor at its border. It's always going to be world third largest population that is growing younger.
Yeah.
But Europe, I'm worried about Europe.
Yeah. And I was connecting there to the fact that you think that Finland should invest more in its own independency. Of course, we want to be in the NATO, we are, and we contribute and we follow the rules, but we should be independent in the way also we create our defenses and our infrastructure. So that I guess it's part of your vision.
It is. You never know what is ahead of you. So one of the key aspects of Finnish security culture is the idea of security of supply. So Finland has always had this kind of island mentality, and our veins, the arteries of Finland, they run across the Baltic Sea, and therefore we feel that we are an island because 90%
comes from water.
Across the Baltic Sea, 90% of exports and imports. So that's quite a lot of dependency on a single sea. So what I have been a success in, the idea that I have is that it should be from sea to sea, like it was before the wars, from the Arctic Sea to the Baltic Sea. So then we wouldn't have to worry so much on the data cables, on the different harm that others can do to us, that we can focus, let's build the railway to north. It would be important to the security of supply of Finland and cut the dependency on the Baltic Sea by opening a route to the northern Atlantic that is secured by the US Navy. So making that happen would be a great benefit to us. So security of supply, it's almost a divine word in Finland, and it also pays attention to that we have to survive in the northern latitudes in crisis situations as well.
Yeah, of course. There's more things to consider to be put in.
Yeah, the food, because
exactly.
generation of people, they can be lazily thinking that food grows in a grocery store.
Yeah.
but it's unfortunately, the security of supply is not as guaranteed as we think.
Yeah. If you can still look at the world and the bigger picture, when there are powers like China that has been mentioned here, with their own plans and with their own activities and moving and supporting Russia. Russia as a power. Then we have America. There are conflicts here and there also. We've seen now Palestine and Israeli war starting again. Are here the premises of a third world war?
Well, I would love to be in the mind of future historians who have the privilege of naming what is happening right now. We are too much focusing on Ukraine as the Russian war in Ukraine as the name for this period of time.
There is much more going on.
It is much more. It can be only a prelude, like Spanish Civil War was for the Second World War, or the Finnish Winter War was for the Second World War. So how to name this period? I'm relatively bleak that our time, the tempo of conflicts, is getting tenser and tenser. So the rhythm is pointing to
acceleration.
And so that's something that we should be ready for. I'm not saying that it's going to be a world war. I think those world wars belong to the particular century. So it's going to have a different name, but what it's going to look like. We have been living under the so-called rule-based world order, and the belief was that all the countries are going to integrate into that. Markets are going to open up. Democratization is going to happen. Trade produces
everywhere.
peace.
At the same way.
Interdependence is a good thing, and now all of these have proven wrong, and we still are lacking the new spirit. The ideological components of the new world order. Russians and the Chinese are saying that they need. That they're promoting the so-called multipolar world order. But the frank, honest truth is historically that world orders usually don't change without series of wars. And if that actually is going to happen, then it's the same as saying that wars are going to be produced. And I can see that easily happening. We can still restore the rule-based order. If Russia loses, if China stays the course and tries to change the system from within rather than through violent means. But it's not guaranteed. So the kind of post-Cold War spirit that was very positive has soured immensely. And as a small state, Finland should be ready. We have chosen our side. In this fight, so we are not sitting on the fence trying to kind of attract benefits from different sides, like perhaps Turkey is or Hungary. We have chosen our sides, and we have to stick the course. We have to make preparations. We have to have a longer-term strategic understanding of what are the challenges ahead of us. A world order challenge is a big thing. It's a painful thing for the contemporaries. So how to navigate this?
Yeah, it's really uncertain, and also I guess that.
And therefore, we need to have the plan from the day one.
Yeah, and your plans anyway are based on scenario analysis and what could happen, and there you find like what are the minimum action that we have to take care of now, because we cannot know what will happen.
Yes,
I was going to comment that if after the Second World War we had this the Cold War between two different suns, the America and Russia. Now it seems that there is at least a game played by three superforces, because China has been only growing.
Yes, And the nasty thing about the multipolar world order is that the more you have poles, i.e., concentrations of power in one hands, the more complicated it gets. If you're playing a board game and you're playing with one other person, it's relatively simple and logical, like the Cold War years was, Soviet Union and US. But if you have like 5 players in the game, it gets tricky.
Absolutely.
And coordination issues are going to result. So it's not going to be a very sustainable world order if there's more than 5. If there's more, well, actually the more sustainable world order is when there's 2 players. Many are saying that the Cold War years were relatively sustainable when it comes to Cold War world order. But what I'm seeing is the emergence of 2 poles. China becoming among the BRIC countries. China has 80% of the economic. Chinese economy is 80% out of the BRICS. Yeah. So it's very dominated by China. Pole that is emerging. So I can see bipolar world emerging out of this.
So China and
US.
Because
US is always going to be there.
You don't see that Russia is a third.
No, Russia. Well, they are trying to make themselves into a military player, but it has been difficult for them. But you have to say that Russia has managed to do certain things correctly. They are producing arms.
Yes.
We are not. We are emptying our storages.
Yes.
So we are not paying attention to long-term challenge. Yeah. We are paying attention to kind of the half a year challenge. Yeah. And that's the problem that Europe is facing. That
putting down fires without thinking about.
Exactly. We don't have the end game.
Yeah, because the Ukraine war and freezing it, getting it stuck at this kind of level helps only Russia.
It does.
To regroup.
Yeah, freezing the conflict actually results in Russia being able to divert resources from there to other issues that they might have in front of them. So freezing it is a really bad option. But it might be what Russia has been doing for the past months.
But at the same time, China is helping economically and with resources. So yes. China is allowing another sun to raise.
And there's 2 kind of tension points right now emerging. Taiwan, long existing
conflict.
And what China is going to do with vis-a-vis Taiwan. But the other issue is Philippines. That is clearly becoming more of a concern right now. China is behaving very aggressively against Philippines. So it's the first island chain, composed of Taiwan, Japan, Philippines.
Yeah, to extend the border.
Yeah, because that stops. Those are countries allied with US. It stops Chinese access to the blue waters, to the deep seas.
Yeah.
Japanese prime minister once said in 80s that Japan is an unsinkable US aircraft carrier, and that's the kind of the game there.
Yeah.
So China is putting pressure to the first island chain that is surrounding China, that are countries allied to US. So Philippines is so I think Taiwan is attractive for them, but they haven't been fighting wars for a long time. So they're looking for an easier demonstration of power.
Yeah, take
Taiwan.
Fast.
So, but I'm worried about China. Demography is looking really bad there. Economic model it doesn't look so promising anymore. So if they choose to do the same as Russia did in around 2010, because you cannot make the people's wallets anymore weightier, because your natural resources are getting scarce, and they are in places like Arctic where they are much more expensive to drill. So he decided to make the kind of the feeling of belonging to Russia more weightier. The kind of a very fascistic understanding of nationalism.
Mm.
That is always an option for China as well, for the internal harmony.
Yeah.
Kind of amping up that side of things might be what they are preparing for.
To get the motivation there.
Yes, because economically they cannot do the same miracle anymore for number of reasons.
Yeah, yeah. What kind of you've been in? I was saying you have been in politics and in game of politics where there is decision making, power play. You know, even if you are not a pure politician and you are not.
No, I'm not.
Yeah. Do you think you can still handle the political environment?
Well, of course, the elections are very political, but a president's position is usually considered to be apolitical, or at least he's above the everyday politics, and he's supposed to be above the party politics. So, president, when he is elected, he has to hand in his party membership card.
Yeah.
I don't have one. I don't have to hand it in.
Yeah.
And when it comes to choosing my advisors, I wouldn't use party as a source for them, any single party. But I know the people.
You're free of choosing whatever you want.
I know the diplomats. I know the people, and there's excellent talent out there. So I don't have a partisan view.
You're
in my
talented
brain.
Oriented.
Yes.
Yeah.
Talent oriented and result oriented in that respect. So once in a while there has been Finnish presidents who come a little bit outside of the box. President Ahtisaari, who got the Nobel Peace Prize, is a good example of that. He was chosen by the people. He had a party membership, but he was always outside of the political parties as such. He was just a kind of a standing member.
Yeah.
Not a prominent politician. He wasn't in politics. He wasn't a political figure. And he came and he was elected because of the upheavals back then.
Yeah.
And now we have upheavals, so perhaps I don't know, but perhaps people are going to look favorably for new type of talent.
How do you recharge your batteries in these days?
Well, it's enjoyable. I like giving speeches, so those are relatively empowering when you go out there and you meet people and you have an audience. So it's not as hard as some people would tend to think. The threshold with media, because of the spinning of the message, Finns are not very versed in spinning.
Yeah.
So we like to think that politics is pure.
Yeah, some narrative there is.
Yeah, there's always the spinning. So you give an interview and the side sentence gets translated into huge, like what did he mean?
Yeah.
So we are sidetracked very easily, I know the game, so let's see how I manage to do that. I'm not a politician.
And you're not running a campaign with like huge entourage of people.
Yeah, one side note here is that when you have a political party behind you, then you have also the political support out of the state budget.
Yeah.
Finland gives political parties taxpayers money quite a lot. We are second in European Union when it comes to how much taxpayers' money is given to political parties.
As a support.
I don't have that, so we need to. Not a single cent is used in my campaign, so it's all volunteers. We have 3,400 volunteers right now.
Congratulations.
Well, that's something. It's in 2 months.
Yeah.
Building an organization like that, it's a new experience. It's something that other people don't have in their CV.
Sure.
But we don't have that money, so it means that we don't have marketing agencies. We don't have big PR firms working for us. So we cannot spin much.
Yeah.
We cannot spin the message much, but we can be honest to what we are, and some people appreciate that.
Yeah, that's refreshing for sure.
Yes, kind of underdog phenomena, but underdogs are underdogs.
Yeah, yeah. Tell one value that you value the most. We were talking about your value, but if you consider, like, I guess I know already the answer after all this.
Well, I have been emphasizing courage. I think it is a kind of a hallmark to the way I usually do things. Loyalty I appreciate quite a lot. So when you're working for a team, for an organization, that you are loyal to the goals. But I don't appreciate party political loyalty. so there's loyalty that is pure for a good cause, for a purpose that feels natural. Then loyalty, I think, is something. I'm usually very loyal towards my friends.
Not blind loyalty. Then.
Not blind in the sense that I wouldn't commit crimes because of it. But if the cause is pure, then let's fight for it. So that type of loyalty. I'm usually very open, perhaps too much so, because I'm not a politician and I like to speak my mind.
Yeah.
It would be better because of the spinning.
To filter.
Yeah, filter quite a lot, to stick to kind of very rehearsed talking points.
But you will lose this genuine touch.
Exactly. That natural, personal, honest touch. So, advices I get from senior counselors in the movement is that, stay who you are. It has been working for you. It's going to work now. Otherwise, it's going to be a failure.
Yeah, true. Do you have the last words? Why, Mika, for these elections?
Well, Finland has to have a plan for the day one. I have been emphasizing the plan components of the platform, presidential platform. Concrete ideas, initiatives, and then we can have a discussion on those, because one of the president's capabilities is to have a forum or platform. So let's have a proper discussion, national discussion on, for example, the global issues, challenges, climate change, and how those tie into Finnish future and the plans we are going to be building upon. So things are no longer set in that way that we can wait and see. We have to act right now and here. And that's what I represent, from passive to active, influencing your own destiny in a strategic way. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was brilliant.
It was really good. Thank you.
Opened my eyes to your personality and what you stand for. And thank you so much. All the best. Hope everyone enjoyed. We also heard sometimes your dog snoring in the background.
The dogs were there, yes.
So here there was a quiet atmosphere, really relaxed.
It is natural environment. That's my life. 3 dogs, wife, and son, and then this presidential campaign.
Smooth thing. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
Bye.